Today I'm going to share my journey in raising quail and then our future for poultry on our farm. I got started raising some quail back in 2018. I thought it would be a good enterprise because they're small birds. It's something I could work on as we are getting our cows going for our dairy. Also, I had some seasonal allergies and I wanted to test whether or not eating quail eggs would help with that. So this is what actually happened. In 2018, I did buy some quail eggs and I hatched them here on the farm, and that went very well. Quail are very, very tiny little chicks, and so I did prefer hatching them instead of getting them through the mail. And when I called other places nearby that had some quail, I got some very dire news from them about how quail just wanted to die and they're going to get all these foot infections, etc., etc. And so I didn't really want to buy quail from them, and I ended up hatching my own. The problem with that is normally when you hatch out eggs, as many of you know, you may only get half or 60% hatch rate. And then with the law of nature, you're going to get maybe half female, half male. So out of, hatching eggs, I would get maybe 2 or 3 female. And so I started with that. I went through the whole organic process. I got them certified organic. And we built our whole quail hut, which is basically the Siskovich chicken tractor, and that has worked great for them. And I got eggs, which was exciting. The first day we had eggs, it was momentous. I was very excited. I cooked it up in the pan. It was a really, really tiny egg, but it was delicious. Kept raising them, kept having eggs, and then we went through the winter of 2018. I used a light. I got eggs throughout the winter. I sold some eggs. It was great, but again, I only had 2 or 3 females, which is not a great market. In 2019, I decided to expand and try to raise more quail. That plan did not quite work out, which many of you who've been on a homestead or a farm are well aware of plans not working out. There was some issues with getting some eggs, and then a skunk got in and killed my other quail that I had, actually on the day of my organic inspection, which was super awesome. I eventually did get some more eggs and hatched some more out, but again, law of averages, I ended up with like 3 female. And we started rolling into this last fall, winter. Many of you realize we are building a huge barn. Stacy retired from the Coast Guard. There was a lot going on. So after the winter of 2019 going into 2020, I had a decision to make. Was I going to keep working with quail? I had learned a lot about their behaviors, and I was trying to figure out, did I want to scale up? Which would mean most likely buying a much larger incubator where I could hatch out 50 to 100 eggs. I'd also been working on a prototype of a pasture enclosure for quail where it was light enough that I could move them, but it was also going to be able to be secured to the ground so the wind wouldn't blow it all over, and I would have a wire around it to protect it from predators, but it would be a lot easier to move them in the pasture. Basically, what happened was we transitioned to being a dairy farm. I no longer had to search for an enterprise I could do in the meantime. We were actively getting ready to have our cows calve this coming April, May, and I decided not to renew my organic certification for the quail and to not ramp up with my quail production because we're ramping up with our dairy production. We are definitely going to have chickens. We are now currently starting some Buff Orpington and Dark Cornish little chicken chicks, and they are coming along nicely. They're about 2 weeks old right now. We're going to transition them to a permanent home flock, and then a flock that we will have in a mobile structure out with the cows on pasture where they will break up the cow patties and also eat the larvae, and they'll lay some eggs too. Part of our management philosophy on this farm is that things work together and create a better whole. For us, our center theme is the dairy cows, which also means our pasture. Chickens definitely work better in this model than quail would. With quail, I would have to have a separate pasture structure for them, and they wouldn't really scratch through cow patties, etc. And so it would be separate management of that specific enterprise, whereas chickens I can manage along with my cows and everything works together. So moving forward, here are the things I have learned about raising quail. First off, quail are a lot more hardy than people give them credit for. A lot of people I talk to and the things you read online are that they are very frail, they're going to die at the drop of a hat. They're going to get a lot of infections. They're going to poop all over their feet, etc. I think a lot of that's based because on the fact they have been raised for millennia in cages, which the good thing about that is they lay an egg every day. But my quail chicks from day one were super hardy, and I never had any health problems with them. I never gave them anything. I just gave them good food, and they had access to the pasture that was in their little quail hut, and that was it. Of course there was water, but I never gave them any treatments. They never had any antibiotics. They never had anything I had to treat them for. And it was not because I'm certified organic and I withheld things. It was just I never had a reason to do it. So I think they're a lot hardier than people give them credit for. The second thing I've learned about quail is that they are quail. They are not any other type of poultry, which I know many people told me, and I know a lot of people told me in my comments, and it is true. They are quail. They've been raised in captivity in structures, and they will lay an egg a day. They are pretty neurotic. Maybe if you get different types of quail, they're not as neurotic, or if you raise them a certain way. But I found that they are, and that again doesn't fit with our management system. Another thing I learned about quail is that they will take to a broody hen, which I found was a great way to raise them when they were little chicks. Up till about 4 weeks of age, I could let them free range with a broody hen, and they would just stick with this broody hen, and that was wonderful. Moving forward, for anybody who's interested in doing this type of quail, which this was a coturnix quail, a Japanese quail, I would heartily recommend it for anybody who especially wants to get a quail egg a day and have a small area. Maybe you have a small homestead, you don't feel comfortable with like larger birds, but you feel more comfortable with smaller birds. Or you live in a city or a suburb where you're not allowed to have chickens, you can most likely get away with quail. I would also recommend somebody else out there who has been following along or is interested in trying to get into the organic market, which I think still exists for quail eggs, to try a prototype of having them out on pasture. This would be some type of structure, I believe, because they will go off into the brush. I don't think that they will home at nighttime. I have not perfectly tried that because I was afraid of them not homing at nighttime and then having no quail. When you only have 2 or 3 quail, you have to be a little patient and judicious in what you attempt to do with them. In regards to quail eggs, I really enjoyed having quail eggs. They were perfect for snacking. They're excellent in salads because they have a great proportion of the egg yolk to the egg white, and you can eat it at one bite. If you have a homestead or you just want to have some quail in your backyard, you can definitely harvest quail a lot easier than you can harvest a chicken. I found it was very easy to harvest them and have good quality protein as a small producer or homesteader. So here is one of my last 2 quail that I have. It's a female. It's been a good little quail, actually pretty big, and laid really good eggs. So I am kind of sad to see my quail go. I did get attached and fond of them. But chickens are definitely a better fit for us, and we do want to transition this structure over to chickens, and I don't want to mix the 2 of them. So that is what we're going to do. So today we are going to harvest our last 2 quail and transition over to our chickens. Here we are with our brooder system for our chicks. They're doing very well, and we're looking forward to having them out on the farm. Thanks for all your support in my journey as I've been working with some different poultry on our farm. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so you don't miss a video, and we'll see you next time on the Tom Rosa.